Hello, here we are on week 6, 2 weeks to go. I'm going to spend the first part of the class today really focusing on our final paper, try to help you know how to approach that, make sure that it's as clear as possible. And many of you have reached out to me through email and even phone calls to ask your questions, and please feel encouraged to do so. My goal is to answer as much as I can and make it as easy as possible. I certainly don't want to throw any roadblocks in the way. This is going to be a little bit different video because I'm going to switch over to a screen that I'm going to be reading off of because I want to spend some time actually going through this point by point. It will be the same as your PowerPoint. In fact, if you want to, you can just pull it up and watch it with me. And so I won't, the video is probably going to be odd. I'll be looking at my screen rather than at you. So, yeah, but I want to do it that way because I want to give it as much attention as I can. So here I go, making the switch right now. And so the personal leadership development and growth plan includes a thesis statement. Now, I have the next slide. I'm going to jump to that real quickly, and it talks about what a thesis statement is. And it just gives you a bullet point definition that came right off of a website on writing thesis statements, and I failed to give you the reference point, and I'll do that. I'll put it on your PowerPoint for sure. The main thing here is on the thesis statement. It tells the first bullet point is that it's going to give your reader how you'll interpret the significance of the subject matter under discussion. It gives a roadmap for the paper. It tells where you're going to go with the rest of the paper, in other words. The next one is not so pertinent to this particular paper. In fact, quite honestly, a thesis statement is a little bit of a stretch for this paper anyhow, because it is really more of a personal assessment of yourself and kind of a growth plan that you're establishing for yourself. It's not really a research topic where you are presenting data to support a conclusion that you've drawn. But so in that sense, a thesis statement is a little bit of a stretch, but so this third one doesn't really fit too well. Neither does the next one, makes a claim that others might dispute. That would obviously have no place in this particular paper, so you wouldn't have to try to include that in your thesis. And then the last one is very, very important, that it's a single sentence, usually in an opening paragraph, that basically just lays it out in one sentence, maybe two. This is where you're going to go with your paper. So you would say something like, in this paper, I want to take a look at Clinton's developmental phases and Kouzes and Posner's exemplary leadership practices, and discuss how I want to develop a growth plan for myself to become a better leader. Just something that simple. That's all you have to say. So let's go back now to the other slide. The second point is you give an overview of the participant's leadership role and current organizational context. Now, some of you are very involved in leadership. Ryan is a youth pastor. Others have youth leadership positions. Others are in different kinds of positions. Some of you at this point, Ron is just now making a move from secular work into ministry work. So some of you would have a hard time really knowing how to make all that fit. So what I want you to do is this. If you're in a current leadership role, then talk about that and use that as your, obviously, as your ground zero. For those of you not in a leadership position at this point, I want you to be as realistic as possible. Don't just imagine something, but think about where you feel like your ministry is taking you in the next year or so, or few years at the most. And use that as the context. So for your leadership role in current organizational context, that's what you would use. The third phase, the third part of your paper is that you discuss your developmental stage. Now this is straight from Clinton. You have the phases: sovereign foundations, inner life growth, ministry maturing phase, life maturing phase, convergence, and afterglow. You, none of you are in sovereign foundations, obviously. That has to do with your birth, your childhood home, and all of that. So nobody's in that phase. However, that phase will have an impact. It has huge influence on every single person. I would want to see you incorporate your sovereign foundations. Talk about growing up, talk about the spiritual influences in your life, talk about church influences, talk about what shaped your ideas about ministry, what shaped your ideas about leadership. Include that. You'll want to just help us see what kind of foundations were laid that now have you where you are, and also maybe where you're headed. My guess is many of you could be in the inner life growth phase. Many others could be in the ministry maturing phase. And quite honestly, probably an overlap of the two for a lot of the students in this class. Now, what I want you to do then, obviously, is going to evidence the fact that you have studied and you're getting some concept of what Clinton is saying. And I will say Clinton is great, but you really do have to process it. I read this book for the first time probably 20-something years ago, and still really processing, very deep, very involved, but I think very helpful. So you want to be able to go through that, show why you think you are where you are. Some of you might feel like you're in the life maturing phase. If you do, I welcome you to say so, but be sure that you show clearly through your writing why you think that. I doubt seriously there's anybody in this class that's in convergence, and certainly not an afterglow. But if you do think you are, again, prove it with your writings and using Kouzes and Clinton, excuse me. Leadership needs analysis. Assess the kind of challenges present in your current or immediate future context, and what kind of leadership is needed, what specific leadership competencies you need in order to handle these. Incorporate leadership style into this conversation. So the leadership style would be your assessment you took with Olson. And again, this may be a little bit of a challenge for those who aren't currently in a leadership position, a ministry position. But if you are, do a needs analysis. What's needed right now to take the ministry where you think it needs to go, and then talk about how you think you would do that, what competencies are needed to do that, and then what about your leadership style? Well, let me rephrase it this way. How would your leadership style be used to help accomplish that? And you could probably also talk about ways that your leadership style might be a challenge in that particular context. If you're not in a position at this point of leadership, then I would say the same thing I said in the other one. Just anticipate where you are headed in the fairly near future, and then analyze what you could imagine being the situations that you would be facing. And that brings us down to the heart of the paper, which is the growth plan. Specific, sustainable, concrete action steps needed for the participant, you, to develop in the coming year. That's all very, very defined, isn't it? That you're going to give concrete steps, you're going to have a time frame, sustainable action steps. And you're going to be asked here to not just be shooting off the top of your head things that come to mind, but things that we have studied. And this would be specifically Kouzes and Posner, the 5 exemplary practices, but also could very much include concepts and ideas and things that you've heard out of Clinton. But also, there's been a tremendous amount of discussion on your board, and I'm sure there are things that you've picked up from other students that would be real helpful. And you can include that. Things that you've heard in the lectures, you include that. Now, here's the thing. When you include those kinds of sources, you have to cite that in your bibliography. So and it's simple. Just look in your Turabian book. In fact, to be honest, 90% of the time, I just Google it. How to cite a personal interview, or how to cite a source on a discussion board in Turabian, and it will give you, it'll bring you to some sources that help you with that. So you do your best to get the sources right. And then your conclusion. Your conclusion will be a paragraph, maybe two, that really sums it up. You're gonna bring it in. Someone could flip through your paper, look at the conclusion, and kind of get an idea, especially if they'd already read the opening, the introduction with the thesis statement, and then they flip through and read the conclusion. They could get an idea, basically, of what you had to say and where you were going with your personal growth plan. Now, a couple things. I'll tell you what, I'm going to reduce this back down. I hope that wasn't too awkward with me looking down at somewhere else besides looking at you. A couple things about the paper itself. Let me get out this glare. Is that I am going to be pretty strict on grading. I want to see good content. Obviously, that's the first thing. I'm going to be looking to see if you're engaging with the material. If you, if you're just, giving ideas and your thoughts and your opinions, but doesn't show any evidence of the material, that's going to go hard against your grade. I don't anticipate that. Strictly by the way that your posts have been on the board. You've been very engaged, and so I think I don't anticipate any problems with that. But we do need to show that. It needs to show good style of writing. It needs to flow, and I will grade on that. And I will grade on grammar, spelling. There's no excuse really for misspelled words. You have a spell check on your word processor, just on your computer. So check your spelling, punctuation. Do your best on that. I will check off on that too. I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to be hard. That's not at all my goal. I don't want to be remembered as a hard teacher. But I do want to help you do a good job with writing. If I give you this kind of critique at this point, it'll help you in your other classes, and I really hope some of you will go on to do some graduate studies, and you'll certainly need to have those kinds of things in place then. Also, we'll be grading according to Turabian style of writing papers. It was a learning curve for me. My graduate studies were done in a different style, APA. But so I learned it. You can learn it. It's not too difficult. All right, I'm going to sign off and then come back and we'll talk a little bit about this week's class. Not too much. Oh, by the way, I guess I need to add that I noticed in the syllabus that it says no discussion questions this week. That I inherited this class, and there are some things I probably will do different if I have it in the future. And one thing is I won't delete all discussion questions. I planned on having one this week. Since the syllabus says that, I'm going to honor it. We won't have any discussion questions. So you'll give you all week to work on your paper. God bless you.